there's no more food out in the countryside. So some people tell me, oh, if this stuff hits the fan, I'm going to go out in the countryside and steal food. You aren't going to see. There's nothing there to steal. In fact, I used to work in New Jersey. They called New Jersey the Garden State. I used to think that was the funniest thing. I mean, come on, shopping malls, apartment buildings, pavement everywhere. New Jersey has been often called the armpit of the United States. But years ago, New Jersey used to be a vast network of gardens and farms that produced the food supply for New York City. And every major city in the United States had that. They had a big belt around them that brought the food supply in. And that's how it used to be. But over the last 60 years, that whole network has been completely dismantled. And, the small, it's you can't compete. I can't compete against huge tractors and chemicals and all the complex things that they have. I'll grow my corn. I grew about 20 pounds of corn last year. My corn, of course, was beautiful and alive and nutritious. But it was work over the summertime. Whereas, I can go buy a bag of deer corn, which really doesn't have anything in it, but it looks like the same thing, for $10. So, a small farmer, apparently, if you're trying to sell in the market, people don't know the difference between those two corns. And the food supply has been completely overtaken by the corporate entity. It's astonishingly so how much control there is over the food supply. And what even amazes me is how, there's small resurgences here and there. They're doing all kinds of raids and aggression even on tiny little buying food co-ops, or those people in Missouri who are just raising rabbits, for God's sake. What did they have, 20 or 50 rabbits at the most, and they get totally harassed by the feds. When they're really getting to that level, that means they're trying to tell you they're eradicating every possibility you might have of being able to grow your own food. But you can, and you can totally take control, and you can have control of this aspect of your life. And this is, and of course there's so many things you need to work on, of security and transportation and communication and community more than anything. But the food supply is something that's going to hit you in about 3 days if you haven't taken care of that.
And all it would take is for the truck to quit running. And what do we got? How the food on the shelves in the grocery store won't last a week.
Oh, no. In any kind of emergency, we see it doesn't even last hours. There was a city up in the Northeast that the water supply was going to be interrupted for a couple of days, or it was not going to be fit to drink. And fist fights broke out in the supermarkets over bottles of water within hours of the announcement. So, hey, people, you can filter that or boil it or do something. No, they went to the grocery store. Their bottle of water wasn't there. They started fighting over it in the line. Hey, we got a little more resource than that, people. We can do more than that.
What really intrigued me about 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago, I came up with the concept for Liberty Villages, which is taking a farm or a ranch, 5 acres out in the country, putting low-cost structures, cabins, teepees, yurts, and now we've got dome homes that are available, and growing our own food, generating our own electricity. We got the wind, we got the sun, everything God gave us. Why do we need to pay a power company for power that's at our fingertips?
And why do we need to pay grocery bills for food that we can grow ourselves? And the food you grow, hand-grown food grown with love and with intention, infinitely healthier than the stuff that's sold in the grocery stores or in the restaurants.
The food grown by Monsanto, this genetically modified crap, rats won't even eat genetically modified corn, will they?
No, they won't. And I've seen people that take they take their horses and they calm them down and train them to be able to work with people. I've seen, my neighbor does that, and she said they won't eat the hay that's been grown with the chemicals that people put on their pasture or their hay fields that are provided by Monsanto, the different big companies that do that. It's not food. We talk about the possibility of pandemic or epidemic. We're already in a pandemic. The CDC on their own website says more than half of America has a serious chronic disease of heart disease or diabetes or asthma. It's the food supply. The food supply has almost no nutrition in it. There's numerous studies that show over the last decade the nutritional content of the food has deteriorated. In some cases where there's only about 20% or 30% of the nutrition it used to have, say 30 or 40 years ago. And I remember, I'm only 48, but I remember as a kid hearing the grown-ups talking at that time and saying, so this would be back in the 1960s, and the grown-ups saying, a tomato just doesn't taste like a tomato anymore. Carrots don't taste like a carrot anymore. This is back in the 1960s. They were noticing the loss in the nutrient content in the vegetables back then. And now the food is, they have to put all the MSG and all the other stuff in it, and they've learned how to totally trick your taste buds. But there's nothing in that food. In fact, I have people tell me, they look at my diet, and I'm growing a lot of vegetables, and I'll get meat and different things. They go, that's great, Marjorie, but I just hate vegetables. And I say, if all you've ever done is eat the stuff that they sell in the grocery stores and eat the stuff in the restaurants, you have never eaten vegetables. You have never eaten real food. You grow some of your own food, and you'll have a whole different attitude about that. They won't be, yes, vegetables. You'll be, this is fantastic stuff. Your body will want it. It tastes good. It's fresh. My kids treat basically my yard where I'm growing I have my garden, my rabbitry is the heart of my food production system. And I am delighted. My kids are running through there, and they treat it like a snack bar. Like, the sweet peas are ready. Here's some cherry tomatoes or whatever they're doing. And I love it, and I know that there's only goodness in there. That soil has been taken care of. There's never been any chemicals on it. It's just had pure, clean sunlight where the food's been growing. It's only been washed by rainwater. They can take it right off the plant and eat it. I don't have any problem with that at all. And they run through there, man, let's get some nipples. That's so cool on your mouth, They're having a great time, and I am, as a mother, there's nothing more that you could do to have me be happy, to see my kids eating fresh vegetables and picking them right at the moment of peak ripeness and getting all that nutrition in there, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. My kids the kids, oh my gosh, there's numerous stories, studies about how well kids do when you feed them better food. One of the foundational events that had me, shaking. When you're so scared, your body is just shaking uncontrollably, and it was this. So I'm a community organizer, and I do a lot in my community, and it so happens that in my county was a man who was the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, Steve Bridges. And Steve was very passionate about starting a farm-to-school program where we were going to feed the elementary schools, the kids, local vegetables. And I said, I'm totally all over that, Steve, even though I was homeschooling at the time. I said, I want to support you in that. And everybody else loved this idea. And when you have volunteer organizations, how it's usually one or two people that do all the work and a bunch of other people that say it's great. Well, we got a group of people, and these were all the people that really do stuff. So Steve was the president of TASA, and I was organizing we had the president of the Austin Organic Gardeners Association who lived in that area. We had a powerful group, another woman who had run for a judgeship, Patty Jacobs. Anyway, we had a really powerful group of people that really get stuff done, and we had a couple of meetings, and we even had, we had the support of the state and the federal government. There was grant money. We were like, well, let's take advantage of that. What the heck? The school system said yes. The parents were going, of course, we want our kids to eat good food. Even the kids were asking for salads and vegetables. They grew a little garden in the school there, and they loved it. That one day a year when they made soup from their garden, that was a big highlight. So the kids even wanted it. The thing that totally destroyed that project was sitting down and said, Steve, okay, great, we got everybody who wants this. I said, you're the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. Let's go through your database of farmers and start trying to link this up. Let's contact the farmers. And Steve goes, and we sat down, and I said, oh, in my community, let's do it in my school right here where I live. And I was at that time in a little tiny rural Texas area. We had a little rural elementary school in Texas, had about 500 students in it, so this is K through 4. And he said, well, and we went through the list, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, this is when I started shaking, when we realized that we would have to draw from a tri-county area. There were so few farmers. We were going to have to go from at least 3 different counties to not even get the full amount of food we needed, but just to get a little bit of food. There just isn't any locally grown food growing in the area. I was completely shocked. I was like, come on, we're out in the countryside. There's got to be farms out here. There's organic food. You go to the farmer's market, and there's just not a lot of food. I was shaking. And of course, that whole project fell apart because there's just not the locally grown food anywhere. And then Steve, in one of his newsletters a couple of months later, he had been approached by the Dallas School Board, and the Dallas School Board said, hey, we want to start getting local produce in. You're the president of the Texas Farmers Association. We want organic fresh vegetables. And Steve had to tell them for the entire metropolitan area of Dallas, at that point in time, this was about 5 years ago, there was only one organic farmer. One organic farmer for a population of about, I think it's about 4 million.
Marjorie, I grew up in Fort Worth. My first businesses were in Dallas, and any time a communist, this is what I've been telling people for 20 years. Anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after 3 classes of people in order. The farmers first, because they don't want you to be able to feed yourself. The second is the intelligentsia, that's anybody that's smart enough to know what the hell they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and the police officers that are still loyal to the old regime. In that case, that'd be the Oath Keepers. And that's exactly what's happening right now. We're in that stage, and the war on farmers started almost at the beginning of this century. After the Federal Reserve came into power, they went after the farmers, and they turned farmers and ranchers into criminals, bootleggers and moonshiners for growing corn and making fuel out of it. After Prohibition, there was a Standard Oil station on every corner in every town across America.
Oh, wow, that totally makes sense. I'd always wondered what was behind Prohibition.
That was it. Rockefeller,
Oh,
who said competition is a sin. Rockefeller paid the Women's Temperance League a couple of $1 million, which was worth a lot more back then, to go out and demonstrate and protest against alcohol, nasty old alcohol. Henry Ford's Model Ts, your tractors could run off of alcohol. The second attack on farmers came in the 30s. Do you know what that was?
Let me think. No.
They stole the #1 cash crop in America.
Oh, I know where you're going.
A $1 billion crop, according to popular science or popular mechanics. $1 billion crop, and suddenly you can't grow it, or you become a druggie.
Yeah.
Randolph Hearst got that mansion on top of the mountain because he eliminated his competition and DuPont's competition by making hemp illegal.
Yes, that's what happens when the business gets big and they are able to get into trouble with the government and use the government to their. It's that's what happens, and we're at that point now as a people. We are utterly desperate. We really are. Not only do we not have any local food growing or any of these, we don't even have these skills. They're been gone. I have people saying, do you know how long it would take, how many generations do you think it would take for people to lose the ability to read and write? And people go, oh, that would never happen. I mean, you know, it's so prevalent. In fact, you know, I homeschool my kids. People say, how'd you teach them to read? I didn't do anything. There's so much written stuff everywhere. They just picked it up. But
by the time I went into grade school, I could read better than most high school students, because my grandfather set me on his lap and read comic books to me. Run his finger along the words, and when I went to school, I helped the teachers teach people how to read.
Well, you know what? It's only been 2 generations since we've completely lost the ability to feed ourselves. Because my husband's grandmother had she had an acre garden. She fed her family. She fed most of the neighborhood. They canned, they processed, they had their own food supply. But you know, my husband's parents, they did like I did. You know, we got more interested in color television. We got more interested in college and degrees. And now talking about the weather is considered something really mundane or trite back then. And of course, now in my life that I grow food, weather is like the most important subject you could talk about, because that's, you know, what your day is about and where you're going, and your food supply is dependent on the weather. But it's in 2 generations. In 2 generations, we have completely lost the ability. I mean, we all remember the Victory Gardens. That fed half of America at one point in time.
The best meals that I can remember ever having was in my grandmother's house in Weatherford, Texas. My grandfather was a Methodist preacher. They lived next door to the church, and my grandmother had a Victory Garden in the backyard, and the best food I ever had.
Bingo, exactly. And many of us that are a little bit older do remember those things. And we can do that again. There's no reason we can't do that again. But isn't that amazing? Just 2 generations. 2 generations is gone. So, you know, anything happens, and we get into what they call the FUSA. Dmitry Wildcraft talks about this, and I love the way he says, and you go, huh, FUSA? What are you talking about? He goes, the former USA. And he says, don't think it can't happen. It just happened in Russia. They used to call it the USSR. Now it's the former USSR. You know, within 2 generations, if we no longer had to, you know, if things collapsed that bad, we could lose that ability to read and write. We have already lost even a more fundamental skill, which is the ability to grow our own food. Every other species on the planet, that's the first thing that the parents do, is they teach it how to procure its own food supply. If it's a cat, she's bringing her babies, little mice that have already been wounded that they can play with and learn to do the kill. You know, the dogs are taking the puppies out. You know, everything. The birds are teaching the babies. They all learn how to get their own food supply. And as humans, we learn how to buy Nintendo and go to the grocery store. But we've put ourselves into this incredibly vulnerable situation. And whether it's been, and you know, of course, there are forces with the people with wealth. They want to keep their wealth. It's a natural thing that they're going to want to do and get control, and they've done that. They've done that utterly effectively. But there is, you can relearn those things. And in fact, now, to us, we have a bit of an advantage, because not only can we relearn what our grandparents knew, but we also have access to all kinds of knowledge and skills from other places all over the world. And so I love some of the new creative ways people are coming up with growing food, and coming up with new innovative ideas of how to be more efficient or more simpler. So in some ways we've gotten some freedom to break away from old doctrines or old regimes, but we can totally take control of our food supply. And not only can we take control of it, but it's the most enjoyable and pleasurable and fulfilling thing that you can do. You know, there is something innately wonderful and human about going out and working with the soil, or working with the livestock, and then for me, feeding my family food that I was safe and nutritious and healthy, and you know, having that on the table. It's gotten to now I can't, you know, it doesn't matter. There are very few restaurants in the United States that I feel serves any food that even comes close to what I feed on an average day to my family, what they sit down to at the dinner table. The other food is just bland, or you know, that's all kind. You can tell there's all kinds of flavorings and things put in it to prop it up. Your body knows when there's good nutrition in it. I make bone broths. Bone broths are a very simple thing. You get some bones from your. The other thing is, there's lots of ways to use every part of the animal. Now, if we get our skinless, boneless chicken breast, we don't. That's all we want. But you're losing so much. So I want a chicken. I don't want to buy that chicken. I want the innards. I want the heads and the feet. I use all the parts of it. But one of the things you can do is take bones, and you boil those bones down, simmer them down for an extra day or so, and you can put a little vinegar in there, and it'll help leach out the calcium, the phosphorus, the magnesium, all these really, really nice minerals, and you put them into a bone broth, and you get rid of the bones after that. You don't need them anymore. And it's interesting, the dogs won't eat those bones because they know there's nothing in them. But you've got this broth now, and I'll make a chili out of that or a soup out of that, and I have people come visit my home. They're sitting at my table. We're breaking bread together, and they're embarrassed because they can't stop eating it. And I always make a big pot when I have new people coming over because they just can't. They're eating bowl after bowl after bowl, and I'm like, don't be embarrassed. It's fine. Just go ahead and keep eating it because your body knows there's something in there that it needs, and it can happen every time. And quite honest with you, I'm delighted about it because it just confirms to me again and again that your body knows at a deep level what real food is, and it wants it. And when it gets it, it goes crazy. So yes, I still am seduced by chocolate and corn chips.
Now, where do you live in the Austin area?
We do. We're a little bit southeast of Austin in a little rural community out there, and it's I love Austin. I love the vibe of that kind of the college town and the hip that's going on in Austin. It more suits my personality. So when we have to go into town, that's where we go. But I'm definitely becoming an outside doggy, and I like being. I need more space than what the city is able to give me anymore. Now, you're near Tucson, is that correct?
I'm in the middle of Tucson right now.
Yeah. So
and I'm working with some people that are building dome homes down there in Texas, and another gentleman outside of the Austin area that says he knows how to build magnetic generators, which would power a whole Liberty Village or a whole farm or ranch or a whole home with a little machine that sits in your garage.
Well, these are very, very exciting times because there's no telling how much stuff has been suppressed by those same large corporate entities because, again, they're protecting their market share. So if you've got some generator or, there's the mythical carburetor that makes your car run on 100 miles a gallon. I don't know if that's true or not, but I certainly can see that that's possible.
It's absolutely true. One of my father-in-laws built one, and two guys he was getting about 50 miles a gallon on his truck, and two guys showed up in blue pinstripe suits and said, "Oh, Mr. Babcock, you need to destroy that carburetor you got on that truck there, and the one you're building for your neighbor, Colonel Lloyd Conrad." And he said, "What if I don't?" They said, "We'll kill you."
Yeah. I haven't been directly involved in this, but I've had enough people that say, if we do know anything about alternative energy, we're not letting anybody know about it because it's too dangerous.
That's right. Paul Pantone started the Geet Company, and I knew him 20 years ago, met him in California, shuffled him around. Well, we poured oil in the gas tank of a little 5-horsepower Briggs & Stratton motor, and they put him in an insane asylum for 3.5 years.
Oh dear. Yeah. Yes. There you go. Yeah, that's the easy to discredit anybody completely and quickly, isn't it?
Now, what you're talking about, growing in your backyard, I've talked about the Liberty Village. I mean, that was my original concept, was to take a farm or ranch that had been operating for a century, and and put low-cost structures on there and to house people, and people working together. But the same concept could be done in downtown Dallas, in Austin, in San Antonio. You simply dig up the backyards take a block, one city block, and put the neighbors together. Go out and talk to the neighbors. I mean, I lived in Miami for 8 years and never met my neighbors. If you go out and you meet all the people on your block and say, look, we're gonna turn this block into a Liberty Village. and we're going to put a solar unit on everybody's house. We're going to put wind on everybody's house, and we're going to dig up the backyard and put food in there. You can trade with your neighbors. You can trade your corn for your friends' apples. You know, whatever. We could do.
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount we could do, and it's actually much more fun to grow food as a group, especially the calorie crops. There's some crops that you really need to grow together as a community, and the calorie crops, I make a distinction. Some crops you're growing just for nutrition, so this is going to be your lettuces and your kales and your kind of your little vegetable garden that you want to have right by your house, because the seasonings, the herbs, and these are the more nutritious things. They need a little more care, so you want them real close by your house. But then there's other crops you grow that these are just for your calories. So these are your potatoes and your corn and your sunflower seeds. So these are the crops you're growing just for bulk calories. And the calorie crops are most fun to grow as a community, and they're most fun, and they most need to be grown by a community, because what they require is bursts with a lot of help of time. So you need, and there's totally food for partying. So we had a calorie crop, we had a corn growing crop project in my community, and it was so much fun. We all got together and we prepared the ground. One group worked on preparing the ground while the other group of us went ahead and planted the seeds into the little flats. And then that was good. That was one big chunk of work that needed to be done. Then we came back together a couple of weeks later after the corn had sprouted, and we all went out and planted together. And then we came back about a month after that, and then we did weeding together. And that's these when you grow, and you need to grow a large area, but when you have a whole group of people doing it, you got the kids running around, you got one or two mamas nursing, and you got this whole, it's a whole party. It's not work at all. You're totally enjoying it. You're catching up with people you like, and you know your neighbors. How's it going for you? You know the job or the kids or the wife, and you're catching up on what's going on, and it's you don't notice that it took us 3 or 4 hours together, and it's totally and completely enjoyable, and a big potluck party afterwards where everybody's bringing a dish to share, and it's a wonderful time. And then at the end of it, you've grown beautiful, healthy food that the whole community is strengthened. And that's the way to grow food. That's the way we used to grow it.
Well, they're fighting that. Now, since I came up with the concept of Liberty Villages about a little over 8 years ago, besides trying to kill me, they started coming out with new laws, and the National Animal Identification System. Are you aware of that? They want you to chip your chickens.
I am. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because now not only, of course, they own all the wildlife, right? If you want to kill a deer, you have to get a license and get permission to hunt. And now they want to own all of the livestock on the planet, and they want you to help them manage their inventory by putting a chip in there so that they you basically control their livestock for them. Oh my gosh, what a crazy program. It's another step in that whole process of completely taking over the food supply and having basically a helpless population that they can easily do whatever they need to do with. And the way to be able to step outside of that whole paradigm is to become self-reliant, to grow your own food, take control of your own food supply, and you can do it. Take control of your community. Get involved with the neighbors around you. Exactly just what you're talking about. The villages. That's
they're trying. The neighborhood association don't want us to dig up our backyards. They don't want us to. They don't want us to put those ugly old windmills on the roofs. So they were trying to stop that, and they're even do that. They've gone after the Amish in the Northeast for selling raw milk.
I know, isn't that such a sin? They sold milk that came right out of a cow. Isn't that terrible? It's such an illegal thing, That's such a horrible thing that you could do, is possibly sell milk from a cow. Oh my gosh, those are evil people.
We gotta boil it first. We gotta treat it first. We gotta make it. We gotta take all of the good stuff out of it.
I have a book that I lend members of my family and in-laws and whoever, and it's a very simple book, and it's the ABC